Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're digging into a seriously fascinating piece of forgotten history. We're going to look at how massive, multi-billion-dollar industries might have actually made us forget about incredibly cheap, everyday solutions to some, well, very expensive household problems.
I mean, think about it. What if multi-billion-dollar industries actually made you forget the cheapest solutions to everyday problems? It kind of sounds like the plot of a mystery novel, right? But historical records and trade journals suggest this is exactly what happened. Why did these simple, highly effective remedies just vanish from our manuals and trade schools? Okay, let's dive into this and look at the actual financial reality of how we maintain our homes and tools today.
Just consider everyday pantry staples. Things you probably have sitting right there in your kitchen cabinets, or stuff you can grab at the local hardware store for just a couple of bucks. Now, contrast that with the modern commercial solutions we're all conditioned to buy today. We're talking anywhere from a $40 bottle of chemicals to a $5,000 HVAC system. The contrast is absolutely staggering. We are literally spending thousands of dollars today on problems that our grandparents solved for pennies.
So, Section 1. The Forgotten Rust Recipe. From blacksmiths to the post-war boom.
Let's take it back to the 1800s. Rural American blacksmiths faced this constant, endless battle with rusting iron tools, horseshoes, plows, you name it. And since the aggressive, modern chemicals we rely on today just didn't exist yet, they had to use what was already sitting inside every farm kitchen. And this simple, homemade recipe, it wasn't some guarded secret, not at all. In the 1890s, it was printed right there in restoration manuals. Right through the 1940s and 50s, it was an absolute staple in farm journals. Mechanics literally learned it during their apprenticeships. But then, by the 1970s, as the post-war chemical boom really took off, this widely known formula quietly vanished from print entirely. It got completely replaced by branded, expensive chemical products.
So, what was the magic ingredient here? Well, it's probably sitting in your kitchen right now. It's just standard, plain, distilled white vinegar, specifically the kind with 5% acetic acid. The chemistry going on here is brilliant, but honestly, it's so simple. This mild acid attacks iron oxide right at the molecular level. It literally strips the oxygen atoms right off the iron. It turns that flaky, nasty orange rust into a harmless dark gray paste.
But vinegar alone isn't the whole secret. The second ingredient is just regular table salt, good old sodium chloride. See, the salt acts as a catalyst for this chemical reaction. It pulls moisture deep down into the rust layer and holds it there, which basically forces the vinegar to penetrate much further than it ever could on its own. Put these two everyday items together and they create a reaction that absolutely outperforms a lot of those $40 store-bought products. No joke.
So here are the exact steps those old mechanics and farmers actually used. First, you mix 1 cup of white vinegar with a half cup of salt until it's totally dissolved. Then, and this is the clever part, you thicken it with a little flour or cornstarch. Why? Because that turns the liquid into a paintable gel that sticks perfectly to vertical surfaces without dripping all over the place. You just brush it on, let it sit for maybe 2 to 6 hours, and then wipe it clean with a damp rag. The rust simply lifts right off, leaving raw, clean, bare steel. And this brilliantly illustrates our next point as we move from fixing a small rusty tool to something way bigger, cooling entire homes. Which brings us to Section 2, the ancient cooling powder, defeating the blazing sun.
40 degrees. Just think about that number for a second. Back in 1973, a researcher at the Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory out in California painted a flat rooftop with a super simple mix of powdered limestone and water. And the result? That white roof dropped its surface temperature by a stunning 40 degrees compared to the dark roof sitting right next to it. The inside of the building actually dropped by 8 degrees, which entirely eliminated the need for air conditioning that whole summer. Crazy, right?
But here's the really wild part. This was definitely not some brand new scientific discovery in 1973. Humanity had already been doing this for over 3,000 years. Going way back to 1500 BC, the Minoans on the island of Crete crushed up local limestone, mixed it with water, and painted their walls with it. This kept their indoor temperatures hovering around 72 degrees, even when it was pushing 95 degrees outside. The ancient Greeks, the Romans, the people of Santorini, literally billions of people throughout history used crushed calcium carbonate and the basic physics of sunlight to survive the blazing summer heat.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how modern science is actually coming around to validate this ancient practice. Fast forward to 2021, and Professor Zulin Rowan over at Purdue University created a formula that reflects a massive 98.1% of sunlight. To put that into perspective, your standard commercial white paint tops out at maybe 80% reflection on a good day.
This Purdue formula is actually so effective that it drops surface temperatures below the ambient air temperature. It's literally generating more cooling power than a central AC unit running inside your house, and it doesn't use a single watt of electricity to do it.
If we look back at the traditional DIY application, it's incredibly straightforward. You just run to the hardware store and buy a 50-pound bag of Type S hydrated lime. That's going to set you back maybe $7 to $14. You mix 1 part lime to 2 parts water until it looks kind of like thin milk, and then you just apply 2 full coats right to your roof. According to our sources, there was a homeowner down in Texas who used this exact method, and he watched his attic temperature completely plummet from a blistering 140 degrees down to 97 degrees. His AC barely even kicked on the entire summer. So, if a $14 bag of lime and a $2 jar of vinegar work this incredibly well, why on earth aren't we all using them?
That brings us to Section 3, the economics of suppression, following the money.
The financial reality of this whole situation is, well, pretty stark. Our sources indicate that these historical recipes didn't fail chemically. Obviously, they work. Instead, their economic models failed. Basically, they just didn't generate recurring profits for massive industries. Think about it. For rust repair, a DIY batch costs roughly $2, but a professional commercial fix, that's going to run you anywhere from $80 to $300 per panel. For home cooling, you can spend maybe $28 max on some lime, or you can spend $5,000 to $15,000 up front on an AC unit, plus another $150 every single month for the electricity to run it. The chemical industry is a $500 billion market. The global paint and AC industries, over $300 billion combined. And those industries absolutely thrive on recurring revenue, not one-time, dirt-cheap DIY fixes.
So the crucial point is this right here. You cannot patent vinegar. You can't patent salt, and you definitely can't patent limestone. You simply cannot create a subscription model or an exclusive trademark for basic pantry items or crushed-up rocks. Because these major industries just couldn't monetize these natural, highly effective solutions, they simply stopped promoting them. Eventually, they were just quietly scrubbed from trade schools, from repair manuals, and ultimately from consumer awareness altogether.
And in some cases, the shift away from these natural methods is actually codified right into modern neighborhood rules. Across dozens of states, homeowners associations, or HOAs, explicitly prohibit white-colored or highly reflective roofing surfaces. They actually mandate these dark earth tones, browns, and dark grays. Now, purely from a physics standpoint, these dark colors absorb the absolute maximum amount of solar heat, which basically guarantees that the homeowner is going to need to use and constantly pay for mechanical air conditioning just to stay comfortable inside their own house.
Looking back at the timeline really puts this whole shift into perspective for us. Back in 1500 BC, natural lime cooling was everywhere. It was the standard. It wasn't until 1902 that Willis Carrier came along and invented modern air conditioning. Now, don't get me wrong, that invention was absolutely incredible, but it decisively shifted the entire world away from a free, one-time natural cooling solution and locked us straight into a subscription-based mechanical cooling model. Fast forward to today, and we literally have neighborhood associations banning the exact same ancient white roof methods that kept our ancestors cool for millennia.
Which really leaves us with this final vital question. What other simple solutions are hidden in plain sight, just waiting for us to remember them? The knowledge to fix our tools and naturally cool our homes never actually disappeared. It was just buried under billions of dollars of modern marketing. I think it's high time we start reclaiming some of this historical knowledge. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep asking questions, keep digging into the past, and whatever you do, never underestimate the power of the simple things sitting right there in your pantry.